defendant, 2018, criminal docket 309, count 1. Charges of Emanuel Lopes of Weymouth in the county of Norfolk on or about July 15, 2018, at Weymouth. In the county of Norfolk, did assault and beat Michael-Chesna with intent to murder him, and by assault and beating did kill and murder Mike Chesna, violation of Mass General Laws 265, Section 1. Count 2 of the indictment charges of Emanuel Lopes of Weymouth in the county of Norfolk on or about July 15, 2018, at Weymouth in the county of Norfolk, did assault and beat Vera Adams with intent to murder her. By assault and beating did kill and murder said Vera Adams in violation of Mass General Laws 265, Section 1. Count 3 charges armed assault with intent to murder with a firearm, as does count 4. Count 5 charges assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. Count 6 charges carrying a firearm. Count 7 charges larceny of a firearm. Count 8 charges leaving the scene of property damage. Count 9 charges negligent operation of a motor vehicle. Count 10 charges use of a motor vehicle without authority. Count 11 charges malicious destruction of property. Attorney Tippin is waiting formal reading of the subsequent indictments after the murder charge. How does the defendant wish to plead?
Not guilty.
Is there a question, Bill?
Your Honor, the Commonwealth proceeds to have the defendant held without bail in this matter.
Is there any objection to that?
Yes.
Is there objection to being held without bail?
Yes.
All right. I hear you.
Thank you, Your Honor. First would be the facts of the case. Your Honor, it's alleged that on the evening of July 14th into the early morning hours of July 15th, the defendant was with his girlfriend and had stayed the night at his girlfriend's home in Weymouth. Sometime between the hours of 5:30 a.m. and 7 a.m., the defendant took his girlfriend's car, a white BMW, without her permission. And he called her at 7 a.m. on her cell phone. After receiving this call, waking her up, she looked outside, realized her car was gone, and at 7:16 sent him a series of texts saying that she was going to call the police, that he had stolen her car. At this same time, operators on the road of Route 18 in Abington into Weymouth saw the white BMW traveling at speeds in excess of 80 miles an hour, weaving in and out of traffic, heading in a northerly direction back to the girlfriend, similar to what would be the girlfriend's home. At 7:35, his girlfriend would call the police and report the car stolen. It was shortly before this call that the defendant lost control of the motor vehicle and collided with another car at the intersection of Columbia Road and Route 18, right by South Shore Hospital. The defendant exited the white BMW, knocked on the window of the operator of the car he collided into, apologized, and was seen running away through the grounds of South Shore Hospital. And then it is determined that he went to a wooded area between South Shore Hospital and Burton Terrace, a residential street in Weymouth. Shortly around 7:40 a.m., a resident of Burton Terrace saw a rock come through his kitchen window, a large stone, approximately the size of about half the size of a soccer ball. This resident called Weymouth police, and his neighbor went outside after hearing the crash and saw the defendant with another rock over his head. At this same time, Your Honor, as a result of the erratic driving and the car accident, several calls had gone to the Weymouth Police Department, and several officers were responding to the area looking for the person driving the white BMW. One of those officers was Michael-Chesna. He arrived on Burton Terrace, and a witness saw Sergeant Chesna. His car arrived, get out of his car, withdraw his weapon from his holster, and never pointed it at the defendant, but ordered the defendant to drop the rock. The defendant walked briskly with the rock over his head about 10 to 12 feet away from Sergeant Chesna and threw it double overhand style, hitting Sergeant Chesna in the face and head. Sergeant Chesna was dropped to the ground, and the witness characterized him as being unconscious. His firearm was at his feet, and the defendant was observed walking over briskly to the firearm, picking it up by the trigger, and one round going off into Sergeant Chesna's vehicle. At that point, he took the firearm, turned it on Sergeant Chesna, and shot him 8 times. 5 times were aimed at his head, 3 times at his torso. Other officers arrived while this was proceeding, Officers Murphy and Marini, in separate vehicles. Murphy saw Chesna being shot and returned fire with 1 round through his own windshield to stop him. It's believed that that round hit the defendant right by his right knee. The defendant then returned fire and shot at Murphy and Marini 4 times. 13 shell casings were found by Sergeant Chesna's body, accounting for the missed round that went off initially, the 8 at Chesna, and the 4 at Marini and Murphy. After being shot, the defendant fled through the backyard to Burton Terrace, and officers responded and civilians to render aid to Chesna. Once Chesna was being taken care of by civilians and officers, other officers arrived on scene and began to try and find the defendant. They heard 3 more shots come from a nearby house at Torrey Street, 100 Torrey Street, which is near the corner of Burton Terrace and Torrey. Soon after those shots were heard, officers went to that backyard and saw the defendant walk from behind a shed with Sergeant Chesna's firearm and the slide completely racked back, indicating that all 16 shots had been fired. They ordered him to drop the firearm and get on the ground, which he did. They took him into custody and quickly got him off the premises and out of the scene. Because there were so many officers there, there was one cruiser that was right by the incident, took him right to Weymouth PD. They soon realized that he may have been hit by Murphy's round and called an ambulance to transport him from Weymouth PD to South Shore Hospital. At the same time, the ambulance was taking Sergeant Chesna to South Shore Hospital, where he would be treated by emergency personnel, but eventually would be pronounced dead at 8:35 a.m. that morning. During a survey of the scene, officers found 3 bullet holes in a sliding glass door on a porch by 100 Torrey Street. Behind the sliding glass door was Vera Adams, resident of that 100 Torrey Street. She had been shot twice, and the remaining round had been discovered in a door jamb near where she was standing. One of those rounds entered her heart and was a fatal round. Your Honor, the defendant has two other open cases. These charges are serious. They are life felonies with the possibility of parole. In addition, he has family in Cape Verde. We believe he's a flight risk, and as a result, we ask that because of the charges, he should be held up in.
All right. Mr. Tipton.
Thank you. I think this case needs to be considered for purposes of bail, even though I understand the court's authorized, to hold him without bail. But I'm asking for a cash bail to be set, but more importantly, that a condition of release be mental health confinement in a mental health institution while this case is pending. As the Commonwealth has alleged, a lot of these facts, what we do know from the Commonwealth's own discovery that they provided, that this is a 21-year-old man who has suffered from mental illness ever since he was young. That according to the police statements, they've taken his mental health history is well documented.
Is there a question of competence?
Not at this moment. We're exploring it. I explained to the Commonwealth that within the next week or two, we will present an evaluation regarding competency.
You're not asking for 15A?
Not at this time.
Okay.
That just shortly before July 15th, his mother sought to involuntarily hospitalize him because of his erratic behavior. South Shore Medical Center determined not to hospitalize him. That he has a history of suicide ideation. That he has in fact cut his neck with a pair of scissors in an attempt to commit suicide. That his cell phone that's been examined by the police showed that in the hours leading up to the tragedies that happened on July 15th, that he was talking nonsense, that he was videotaping himself talking nonsense and being erratic. That he was telling people in the days and weeks before July 15th that Martians had landed, that his mother and friends were in danger of being harmed. He then, on the day of this incident, called a person and told her that she was in some danger. And thereafter, the tragedies happened. The civilian that the Commonwealth had just referred to has told the police that he heard breaking glass, he looked out his window, and he saw this man standing, but not attempting to get into the broken window. That in fact, he walked, turned around, and began just to walk toward the street. At that time, the civilian witness came outside, made further observations, and saw the police car arrive. At that time, somehow, this man got what has been described as a large rock, we think what it is based on one of the other civilians there, decorative gardening rocks. That he picks it up, but he continues to walk. He doesn't say a word. This man, he looks at this other civilian that now has come out to assist the police. He doesn't say a word to him. The rock is thrown according to the civilian. The gun falls. According to the civilian, the man that he believes is Mr. Lopes picks up the gun and simply starts firing. No words, no anything. He then, after the shots are fired, he looks over to that civilian, makes eye contact with him, does not say anything, does not point the gun towards him, and then simply walks away in somewhat of a robotic fashion. Police arrive on the scene. I won't go into what they said because that's not important. What we do know, based on the issue of today, for purposes of holding him in a mental health institute for now, is that he has been put into the police car. They don't even know that he's been shot. The officer transporting him for 3 minutes say that he is yelling in the back seat, he's saying nonsensical things, he's banging his head against the plexiglass, he's making so many outrageous, unsensible comments that the officer turns his radio on. That at some point he says, I've been shot. Calmly says, I've been shot. The officer doesn't believe it. This doesn't impeach the officer at all. The officer just didn't believe it. They get him to the police station 3 minutes later. They open the back door after he's been in the car for about 5 minutes, as they have to follow their own procedure. They open the door, and now he's almost passed out. And there's blood all over his seat, and they see 2 holes in his legs. At that point, they take him out, and they do what good police officers do. They take him and have him taken to South Shore. South Shore then says within 2 hours of this tragedy that happened on July 15th, that he is talking nonsense, he's erratic, he's denying hallucinations but talking to people that aren't there, he's agitated, he's talking about seeing Jesus Christ, he's talking about his girlfriend is chasing him around the room, and that goes on for hours and hours on July 15th. With the documented history of this man's mental illness and the conduct that has been observed and been informed, the Commonwealth has been informed. I'm asking that some type of cash bail be set, but with the strict condition that his release requires that he be in a secure facility while this case is pending.
All right, Mr. Conner, do you wish to be heard further?
Your Honor, I don't believe that a person who has displayed mental health issues like the defendant has in the past should be left to his own devices. If there is an issue regarding competency, there is a procedure in which it can be evaluated. If he needs mental health treatment, the Sheriff's Department can provide it at the jail. In addition, his suicide attempt that speaks of him cutting his neck was 5 years ago. The angry speaking in the cruiser could be attributed to being shot. The saying that he was warning people that someone was coming for him, that night beforehand, he had been in an argument with a person that he was routinely threatening via social media. And that person was waiting at a residence that he had been staying at for 2 weeks. So there were people looking for him. To me, Your Honor, it sounds like a person who could appreciate what was going on around him. And that was why he was warning civilians about people coming for him.
All right, there's no entitlement to bail in this kind of case, given the seriousness of the offense. I'm going to hold Mr. Lopes without bail. It may be appropriate soon to get a 15A evaluation and further evaluation, but at this point, I'm going to hold him without bail. Have you set other dates? Have you agreed to other dates?
We have, Your Honor, November 30th for pre-trial.